Welcome back, listeners. We're about to take a deep dive into the world of Edgar Allan Poe, but with a twist.
A twist, indeed.
We're going to explore Poe's work, yeah, but we're also going to analyze his personality through the lens of the Enneagram.
Fascinating.
Think of it like a psychological decoder ring.
I like
you
that.
know? Helps us to understand not just what Poe wrote, but why.
Precisely. And we're focusing specifically on the social type 4 today.
Sometimes called the romantic, right?
Exactly.
All right, so social type 4.
Okay, so imagine someone who feels things very deeply, they're intense, and they yearn for authenticity. They want to be genuine in everything they do.
Okay.
But they often struggle with this sense of not quite belonging, of being different.
Oh, yeah, that outsider feeling.
Exactly.
And honestly, that just screams Poe, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
I mean, think about his work. Melancholy, death, beauty, the macabre. It's all there.
Yes. It's like those themes are a window into the way a social form might experience the world.
Instead of just saying, oh, Poe was a gloomy guy,
Right.
we can look deeper and see if there's a pattern there, a personality type at play.
Absolutely. And to do that, we have to start with Poe's life, his experiences.
Like he lost both his parents when he was young.
Yes. And his foster mother, too, later on.
And then, of course, his wife, Virginia.
These weren't just events in Poe's life. They were deeply formative.
I mean, the fall of the House of Usher.
Oh, yes.
Roderick Usher. So isolated and decaying, both physically and mentally.
Haunted by his own mind.
Almost like Poe is channeling his own grief and loss into that character,
It's definitely possible, yes. But what I find fascinating is how he does it.
Yeah. How so?
See, for a social 4, pain isn't just something to endure. It can be transformed. It becomes a source of inspiration, even beauty.
Oh, that's interesting.
They see their suffering as something that sets them apart, something that gives them a unique perspective.
I never thought about it like that. But yeah, you can see it in Poe's writing.
Absolutely.
It's not just that he writes about sad things. It's that he elevates them,
Yes.
Like his famous quote, the death of a beautiful woman is the most poetical topic in the world.
Powerful, isn't it?
It's dark, sure, but he finds poetry in it.
And that awareness of mortality, of life's fragility, is so typical of this type.
I see.
They're drawn to the things that others might shy away from because they are in tune with those deeper, darker aspects of existence.
Okay, but couldn't you say that about a lot of writers?
Mhm.
Like lots of writers explore death and loss.
Oh, definitely.
So what makes Poe stand out? What makes him fit this social form mold specifically?
You're right to question that. It's important to go beyond the surface level.
Okay.
So let's take the Raven as an example. It's not just about the grief. It's about the rhythm of that grief, how it consumes the narrator.
A never-ending cycle.
Yes, and the way the poems structure, the sounds, the images, it all creates this feeling of being trapped in that cycle of mourning. That's where we might see that uniquely social 4 approach.
So it's not just the themes, but the way he uses them. The artistic choices, the way he turns his own internal world into something we can experience.
Precisely.
Powerful stuff. And speaking of the internal world, let's talk about Poe's outsider status. He wasn't exactly embraced by the literary establishment of his time, was he?
No, he wasn't.
He faced rejection, financial struggles.
A lot of hardship.
And maybe that wasn't just bad luck, What if it was actually connected to his personality type?
It's a compelling thought, isn't it? He's writing about outsiders, but he is an outsider himself.
So he's living that experience. And that really fits with the whole idea of the social 4 seeking validation, but also resisting conformity. Right?
It does, yes.
They want to be recognized for their unique vision, but on their own terms.
It's a paradox, but it's one that a lot of creative people struggle with, I think. I bet many of our listeners have felt that pull, that tension between wanting to fit in, wanting to be accepted, but also wanting to stand out,
To be different, to be seen for who you truly are.
Exactly. And this brings us to, well, the more difficult aspects of Poe's life, the alcoholism, the self-destructive behaviors.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore those when you're trying to paint a picture of his personality.
Absolutely. And it's a sensitive topic.
Of course.
But when we view it through the lens of the Enneagram, these struggles can make more sense.
How so?
Well, they can be seen as a manifestation of that inner turmoil that a lot of social 4s experience.
Okay.
They might feel inadequate, like they don't measure up, and that can easily lead to self-sabotaging behaviors.
So it's not just a lack of willpower, it's connected to these these deeper fears and motivations.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And it really highlights that double-edged sword, doesn't it?
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, the same emotional depth that fuels Poe's art, that allows him to create these incredible works, that same depth can also make him more vulnerable to despair.
You're absolutely right.
It's like his intensity, his awareness of life's shadows, those are both his strength and his downfall.
A beautiful and painful paradox.
And Poe's relationships were pretty tumultuous too, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
Does that fit into this picture as well? That need for validation, but also that intense fear of rejection.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
it's that push and pull, like wanting connection desperately,
Yeah.
but at the same time, this fear of being vulnerable, of
Mm.
being truly seen and, maybe rejected.
Rejected, yeah.
And for a social four, that rejection, it can be just devastating
Right.
because it reinforces that feeling of being different, of not belonging.
Yeah, it's like all their fears confirmed in one fell swoop.
Exactly.
Which makes me wonder if Poe maybe also struggled with social anxiety.
It's
Our
possible.
sources seem to hint at it.
Mm-hmm.
And it would make sense given, how self-aware social fours are
Yeah.
and that fear of being misunderstood.
Right. And that's an interesting point you bring up.
Yeah.
Because despite that potential for social anxiety, Poe did still seek connection.
Right. He wasn't a hermit.
Exactly. He gravitated towards people who got him, who appreciated his unique perspective.
People he could really talk to.
Exactly engage with on an intellectual and emotional level.
So it's not that social fours are antisocial.
Right.
It's more like they just crave a very specific kind of connection Really?
Deep, authentic.
with people who really understand them.
See them for who they are.
Yeah, and isn't that what great art does in a way?
Oh, interesting. How so?
It creates a bridge, between the artist's inner world
Mm-hmm.
and the audience's experience.
Poe was pretty good at that.
He was a master. I mean, with language imagery,
Yeah.
the way he evokes such strong emotions,
Oh, yeah.
he was incredible at forging that connection.
Think about his influence on Gothic literature.
Oh, absolutely.
Detective fiction, even.
He wasn't just telling stories, he was creating worlds
Entire world, yeah.
that drew readers into his vision.
It's true. You get completely sucked in.
Don't you?
Yeah. Poe is a master of atmosphere.
Suspense.
Dread,
Oh, those chilling tales.
the telltale heart, the pit and the pendulum.
Oh, my God.
He knew how to get under your skin.
Yeah.
Make you feel those primal fears.
He did. And that mastery of his craft,
Mm-hmm.
that attention to detail,
It speaks to the social four personality, too.
does it?
They're often drawn to artistic pursuits.
Oh, interesting.
And they bring that same intensity, that depth of feeling to their creative work.
Okay.
They're not content with the superficial.
No, I want to go deeper.
They want to explore the nuances, the shadows, the things that other people might overlook.
Like Poe did.
Exactly. Poe wasn't afraid to go to those dark places.
No, he wasn't. The macabre, the grotesque.
Those were his playgrounds.
And yet within that darkness, he found beauty too.
He
A
did.
kind of perverse aesthetic
Yeah.
that still fascinates people today.
And that's what makes his work so enduring.
It's true. I mean, it's unsettling.
It's provoking. You can't forget it.
Right? He forces us to confront things.
Right.
Our own mortality, our fears, our desires.
And that's powerful. It's not just entertainment.
Wow.
It's an exploration of what it means to be human.
Poe is like a psychological mirror, isn't he?
I like that.
Reflecting back at us, those parts of ourselves.
Yeah, the hidden parts.
The parts we don't always want to acknowledge.
Yeah. But there's a strange comfort in that, too.
Is there?
In seeing those darker impulses reflected in art.
Like, it's okay to feel these things.
Exactly. Like you're not alone in your darkness.
That's a really nice way to put it.
And that message, of acceptance,
Yeah.
of finding beauty in the unconventional, that's a really important part of the social four's legacy.
They challenge us.
To look deeper, to appreciate complexity,
Not to judge.
and to celebrate individuality.
In all its forms.
Yes,
It's true. I mean, Poe's impact on literature, on pop culture,
it's undeniable.
from classic horror films to modern graphic novels even,
Everywhere you look.
he tapped into something timeless
Primal.
that still resonates with people today.
Hey, it's fascinating, isn't it? To think about how much of that impact might
Yeah.
be tied to his personality
To those social four characteristics.
that shaped his worldview, his artistic choices.
It really makes you wonder how his life might have been different
Doesn't it?
if he'd lived in a time with more understanding,
of mental health.
Personality types.
Would he have gotten the support he needed?
Yeah.
Could he have channeled his intensity in different ways?
It's a good question.
Hmm.
It reminds us that even brilliant minds can struggle,
They can.
and that asking for help is a strength.
Not a weakness.
We can admire Poe's genius,
Of course.
but also acknowledge his challenges.
And maybe even learn from them.
It's a reminder that creativity and mental health,
They're intertwined.
in complex ways,
And that sometimes that same sensitivity
that makes great art possible.
can also lead to difficulties in life.
It's a delicate balance.
In Poe's case, it's clear that his inner world, with all its darkness and brilliance,
Yeah.
it poured onto the page and left an indelible mark
On literary history.
on us.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how we view artists like Poe. Like, we celebrate their work, but do we really understand them?
That's a great.
The person behind the art.
Mm.
And how might that change how we appreciate what they created?
And it's so crucial, I think. We often try to separate the art from the artist,
Right.
but they're inseparable, really. Poe's struggles weren't just personal. They
No.
became part of his creative expression.
Woven into the fabric of his work.
Exactly. And recognizing that can completely change how we read his work.
It adds a whole new dimension.
It does.
So, okay, let's say we could go back in time
Okay.
and talk to Poe. Knowing what we know now about the Enneagram,
Mm.
what would we tell him? What insights could have helped him?
Well, first, I'd emphasize that his depth of feeling,
Yeah,
his intensity, that's not a weakness.
right.
Those are gifts.
They are.
They're what allow him to create such powerful art, to explore the human psyche the way he does.
To really go there, to those dark places.
Exactly. It's about reframing those traits.
Instead of seeing them as a burden.
Yeah, seeing them as the source of his unique vision.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And what about that feeling of being an outsider?
I'd want him to know that he's not alone.
Yeah.
That there are other people out there who experience the world in a similar way, who feel things deeply, who crave authenticity.
Who regret it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Finding those connections, building a supportive community,
Could have made a world of difference.
it could have.
Finding your tribe,
Your people.
it's such a universal need, I think.
It is.
Especially for people who feel like they don't fit in.
Exactly. And Poe, with his exploration of the macabre, the psychological,
Yeah.
he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
He really was.
And that's why his work still resonates today.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
He tapped into those anxieties,
These fears,
those fascinations.
those things we don't always like to talk about.
But we all think about them.
We do. Death loss, the darker side of human nature.
It's all there in Poe.
He brought them to the forefront, gave them a voice.
And in doing so, maybe he gave a voice to others.
To the people who feel those things most acutely,
The outsiders.
the sensitive souls.
Maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this,
What do you think it is?
Embrace your individuality. Seek out connections that nourish your soul,
And find beauty in the unexpected,
even in the darkness.
even in the darkness. Beautifully said.
So to wrap up our deep dive into Poe's world, we encourage you to go back and revisit his work
With fresh eyes.
with this new perspective. See if you can spot those social four tendencies, that unique way of looking at the world.
And how it shaped his art.
And maybe, just maybe in doing so, you'll learn a little something about yourself as well.
About how your own personality shapes your experience.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.